Hartford's mayor on trial. Next. Welcome to the Stan Simpson Show, a program about Connecticut people and compelling issues. Make it a point to drop in every week. Jury selection is underway for the corruption trial of Hartford Mayor Eddie Perez. While the city deals with a $25 million deficit, there is concern that the mayor will be distracted from conducting Hartford business. And there's also concern about the future of the capital city if Perez is indeed convicted. We'll talk with Council President Pedro Segarra and defense attorney Reese Norris about this much-anticipated trial. In our second segment, we'll discuss solutions for the recent rash of shootings that has New Haven in an uproar. Youth empowerment mentor Malik Ramez joins us, as does attorney Michael Jefferson and New Haven District Lieutenant Thaddeus Reddish. Then we'll wrap things up by talking with Steve Rushin, one of the country's top sports columnists who decided to give up his gig at Sports Illustrated to write novels. But first, the anticipated trial of Mayor Eddie Perez, Reese Norris, Pedro Segarra. Everyone's waiting with bated breath on this. Distraction. Let's talk from a citywide standpoint, Mr. Segarra. How distracting is this for you as a councilman and as a resident?
Well, on the council end, I'm trying not to let it distract our business because we have a challenge in terms of addressing the budget as we go into budget deliberations. It is a distraction in the sense that it does draw focus on the city, on the administration with regards to normal operations.
So point blank, should the mayor step aside, at least temporarily, while this trial goes on?
Well, I think that there's a division of that viewpoint amongst council people. There are a couple of council people that believe that he should not step aside, and they're very supportive of him maintaining the position of mayor even though he is on trial. There is those who are more moderate, about 4 of us, who thinks that yes, he should have stepped aside, but given the fact that he has given indication that he doesn't intend to step aside, that we will monitor the situation closely and make
sure. That's where you stand. That's where you are too.
That's,
right? Okay.
That's where I stand. I mean, I think that our options as a council are very limited. Rather than getting ourselves in a constitutional crisis over who should be the mayor, I think that we best focus our attentions on doing the council business and then just see how it goes from a day to day. I've been very clear, and other council people have been very clear, I think the majority, that if they feel that it gets to the point that city business is not progressing and that this is extremely counterproductive, that we will renew our call to the mayor to step aside if we reach that point.
Let's take a look at some reaction from 2 Hartford leaders to what they think, and then get some reaction from Reese Norris on whether or not there's a strategic advantage to stepping aside or staying in the job. Let's take a look at some reactions from the 2 city leaders. Okay. All right, we don't have sound there for that. Okay, we'll come back there. One was saying, Cornell Lewis was saying that the mayor has not been convicted and deserves the presumption of innocence. Larry Deutsch was saying, hey, he's too distracted. We're not making any judgments, but better to step aside. Reese Norris, is there an advantage strategically to staying in the seat, or is there one to stepping aside temporarily?
I think as a defense lawyer, I think the strategic move is to keep him in the position as mayor.
Why?
Because there is some clout that goes with that position. It's the respect that someone gives to someone who holds that position. And a juror prospectively might think that, well, why did he step aside? If he did nothing wrong, why isn't he continuing to run the city of Hartford? So I think strategically it's a right move to have him continue as mayor.
Recent memory, no politician in this situation has ever stepped aside, right? I think Joe Ganim stayed in office, John Rowland stayed in office, Phil Giordano stayed in office. So it almost seems, I can't think of any precedent where a sitting politician has indeed stepped aside temporarily.
I know of none, and I think that's because their lawyers probably advised them that, listen, we're going to support you. You stay in your position. You're the mayor. And we expect you to be the mayor after this trial. And you have to take that positive attitude.
You're one of the top defense attorneys around the state. Let's put now jury selection on the table. How critical is this situation here for Hubie Santo to find the right jurors? Because all it takes is one to kind of jam this thing up. What's going to be going through Hubie Santo's mind during jury deliberation?
Defense lawyers believe that this is perhaps the most important part of the trial, and we know how to do cross-examination, direct examination, because we have a better understanding of those individuals with whom we're dealing. These are strangers, and so you have to come to get a sense of knowing them and trying to have someone who you believe will be receptive to your arguments and not have any prejudice, which will deny your client a fair and impartial evaluation of the evidence.
Race has been thrown out there. The idea that you want to have a diverse pool if you're the defense, you want to have as many folks of color, Latinos in particular, to help at least enhance the benefit of the doubt for the mayor. That sound strategic strategy, or can that backfire? Can you make an assumption that someone who's simply Latino is going to back the mayor? Can that backfire on you if you're not careful?
Oh, it can. I don't think any good lawyer just judges someone on their race. I mean, that would be a foolish thing to do. You may want a diverse juror, of course, but you also want to know how they think, how they process information, what type of feelings they have coming into this case. And again, as I said, will they be receptive to the types of arguments you're going to be making?
Pedro Segarra, Latino community, what are you hearing pro and con from the community as this trial comes to fruition in May?
Well, I think that there's a split community, people supporting that he step aside, people supporting the idea that he stay and that he's entitled to his trial as a means of determining whether there's guilt or innocence. So you get a varying viewpoint within the community. It's not overwhelming support or overwhelming feelings of people asking him to step down.
Either way, you have a weakened situation, it would seem. If the mayor is indeed convicted, then you have really a turmoil and upheaval in the city. If he is acquitted, then you still have a very wounded mayor. And sort of how do you deal with that as a council member, as a president? Your thoughts on that?
Well, I've been trying to have council be a more dynamic council in terms of establishing policy. I think that I've been in somewhat of a disagreement regarding what a strong mayor means. I've always felt that we should have a strong mayor, but that we also have a strong council who develops and promotes and generates policy. And then it's an issue of working with the executive to making sure that those policies are executed. So I've never been a proponent of the strong mayor as being the absolute authority in the city. And I think that that's the responsibility, and that's what makes an effective government. When you have divisions of responsibilities within the government so that you have balances, you have checks, and you have balances, and you have apportionment of responsibility.
Okay, not enough of that here, you're saying. So, Reese, real quick in about 30 seconds, if you're the prosecutors, what is the most striking piece of evidence you want to drive home to the jury? What's your biggest point you want to make in closing argument in 15 seconds?
I think I want to push the argument that this is a breach of trust and that the people should be entitled to greater responsibility and integrity from their political leaders. And I think that that's the posture I would take, that this is not only a crime but a breach of trust.
If you're Hubie Santo and Hope Seeley, the defense attorneys, what's the one thing you want to drive home in your closing argument, that one or two bullet points to this jury?
I want to drive home that I have a person who works for the people. He's the mayor, and that why would he be so foolish as to jeopardize this position, which he sought so hard to achieve by doing what the state alleges he has done.
And you had a gray area also, right, between that where, okay, what he did may have been unethical, but was a criminal. And that's a point that may be also talked about in this also, correct?
And they're going to stress that the state has to prove each and every element by what is known as proof beyond a reasonable doubt. And if there's one reasonable doubt, they must acquit.
Pedro Segarra, a lot of folks saying that you're the next person in line. Do you have ambitions? I mean, what's this like for you? Because if it turns one way, you're the next guy in the hot seat, so to speak, as mayor. Quick thoughts on that. You up for that?
It would be a responsibility that I would undertake by default. I didn't run for mayor. I wasn't elected mayor. But our system of government provides for a mechanism for transitions when transitions need to occur. And if that transition needed to happen, I will do my best to fulfill that responsibility as I've done in the past in other positions. But it will be by default.
Okay, gentlemen, we'll have you back again. Thanks for your time. When we come back, folks, we'll talk about the recent rash of violence in New Haven and what can be done about it. You are watching The Stan Simpson Show in full HD.
This has nothing to do with guilt or innocence of the mayor. It's just that he can't be over in the mayor's office sitting there.
One, two, three, four, five.
Thank you.
Kind of move over.
All right. And you, sir?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Thank you.
You can actually move.
Enough? Enough is enough. I don't want to see state troopers, but when
Five killings in 8 days, and a new chief was just recently sworn in. Here now, folks, with the New Haven community leaders, we have Malik Ramez, a youth empowerment leader. We have Lieutenant Thaddeus Reddish from New Haven Police Department, Attorney Michael Jefferson. So, folks, five killings, 8 days, the worst kind of violence in almost 20 years in New Haven, and most importantly, no arrests yet. What does that tell us, Mr. Jefferson?
We have a problem. It's welcome to the nightmare in the Elm City. You know, Stan, we live in a violent culture. Let's start there. We see it in Hollywood. We see it on television. If there's not a war, there's a rumor of a war. So we live in a violent culture. In New Haven, you're dealing with a lot of dysfunction in the family, the absence of the black male, so that a lot of young people are running around without the proper guidance. And then you have the availability of guns. And that makes for a dangerous mix. And we have to rise to that challenge. It's a challenge for the African American community. We have to handle that.
And with all that, you have a history of mistrust between the community and the police department. And the police are saying, listen, we need information. Community's not really communicating. Lieutenant, can you speak about that, the need for more communication for folks to speak up?
It's definitely a need for more communication. With me running New Hallville, where a lot of the violence is taking place, what I've tried to do, as well as my officers, we try to go out into the community and talk with people. You know, we're not different from anybody else. This is our job. You know, we're police officers to enforce the law. However, we are part of the community, and we can be trusted. All of us, you can't have the thoughts that we all can't be trusted. You know, the nights of the shootings, I was out there for the latest one on Dixwell Avenue. I was there. I was talking to the people in the community and asking, what happened? What happened? You know me. What happened? But people just refuse. They don't want to talk. They're afraid.
So you feel people out there do know exactly what happened. That's the frustration on your part. People have information.
That's right. People do know what's going on, but the fact is they'll tell us, yes, this is what happened, but I will not sign a statement. I cannot testify in court because they live there, and they fear that somebody's going to come back and retaliate on them.
All right, before we hear from Malik Ramez, who mentors young black males, let's take a look and get some reactions from the streets from folks in New Haven to what they think about all this, and then have Malik respond to this.
Enough is enough. I don't want to see state troopers, but when people are dying, I need state troopers.
We all grew up together, and now all of a sudden it seems as though we're killing each other.
Real bad trouble, it brings people together. So we're at the breaking point, but I believe this is an opportunity, a call for people to come together.
A popular preacher in New Haven, call for state troopers, more police presence. Let's talk about the reality that you can have a small army out there, but if a young man is apt to use a gun to handle a beef, you can have everyone out there. It's not going to stop it. Malik, how do you change that mentality of young men resolving their beefs by shooting first and asking questions later?
Stan, thank you for having me first and foremost. What I see is that it starts from birth. When you have young people, 13, 14, 15 years old with guns, there's something missing. The mom, the dad, there's absentee parents that are not involved in those kids' lives to address the fact that they have guns or drugs.
Fathers in particular?
Fathers in particular. And so what needs to happen is that the black male, the men in the families, whether they're uncles, grandfathers, older brothers, need to address these young men and say, listen, you're doing something wrong. Brothers in the community, church, clergy, the mosque, all have to address these kids and take responsibility for the kids. If they don't, the kids are raising themselves. The kids are basically raising themselves. The kids are telling their mother that I can take care of you. I can take care of this house with drug money and with a gun. And so if we don't get a handle of this, that's what you end up seeing the killings in New Haven, in Hartford, in Waterbury, in New Britain, all over.
Let me just say this. We're dealing with a small percentage of the population. I would say less than 0.5%. Let's be clear about that. It's a very small percentage of the population. And I think we have to respond to that. I'm not going to sit here and make excuses for that population. I think one of the things we have to consider is increasing the mandatory minimum on the gun laws to 3 years. Right now, it's 1 year mandatory minimum if you're caught carrying a pistol without a permit. I think that has to be raised to 3 years. I think we have to send that